I'm Kara Gibson, 28 years old, a freelance accountant in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Numbers are my thing, always have been. They're steady, predictable, unlike people. But there's one thing I love more than ledgers: our family's used bookstore. It's been my anchor since I was a kid, its shelves packed with stories my mother poured her heart into before she passed. That store isn't just a business. It's our legacy, the last piece of her I hold on to. When she died, she left behind an inheritance, a hefty check meant to keep the store running, split between me and my sister. I trusted her. I believed family meant something. Last month on my sister's birthday, I handed her that check, every cent of my share, thinking we'd keep the store alive together. I can still see her face, those sharp eyes that practice smile. She took the check, glanced at it, and laughed a cold, cutting sound. "Thanks for the gift," she said, her voice dripping with something I couldn't place. "Now get out of my life." The words hit like a slap. Her husband stood behind her, silent, avoiding my gaze. Their kids, oblivious, played on their phones in the corner. I stood there frozen, the weight of her betrayal sinking in. She wasn't just taking the money, she was erasing me, erasing our mother's dream. I'd given her everything, and she turned it into a weapon. That moment changed me. I saw her for who she was, not my sister, but someone who'd sell our family's heart for a quick buck. I walked out, my hands shaking, but my mind was already racing. She thought she'd won, thought I'd just disappear. She was wrong. I wasn't going to beg or cry. I was going to make her regret it. If you're hooked on family secrets and betrayals, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for more stories that cut deep. I couldn't stop thinking about that moment. My sister's words still burned, but I needed to understand how we got here. It started 6 months ago when her visits to Portsmouth became more frequent. Rhonda Gibson, my older sister, used to show up maybe once a year, always with some excuse about being too busy with her real estate business. But suddenly she was here every other weekend, her husband David Gibson trailing behind their kids Jude and Maple in tow. At first I thought it was nice family time, something we hadn't had since we were kids ourselves. The bookstore was our common ground, the one place we both cared about, or so I thought. Rhonda would walk through the shop, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor, commenting on the shelves my mother had built. "This place could use a refresh," she'd say, her smile too wide, too practiced. David, always quiet, would nod along, his eyes scanning the room like he was appraising it for a sale. Jude, 13, and Maple, 10, barely looked up from their phones, but Maple sometimes wandered over to the children's section, flipping through old picture books. I'd catch her running her fingers over the covers, and it reminded me of myself at her age, lost in those same stories. I run my accounting business from a small office above the bookstore, balancing ledgers between customers browsing below. It's not glamorous, but it keeps the shop afloat, something Rhonda never seemed to care about before. Growing up, we were never close. She was the outgoing one, always chasing bigger things, while I stayed behind helping Mom keep the store running. After Mom died, Rhonda barely called, only showing up for the will reading. The inheritance was clear, the bookstore, and a check split evenly. I handled the shop's taxes, its bills, pouring every cent I had into it. Rhonda, she cashed her share and moved on. But these visits felt different. Rhonda started asking questions about the shop's revenue, its property value, how much the inheritance check was worth now. "You're sitting on a gold mine, Kara," she said one Sunday, leaning over the counter, her coffee untouched. I laughed it off, thinking she was just being her usual ambitious self. But there was a glint in her eye, something calculated. David chimed in casual, but pointed about how old buildings like ours could be repurposed for profit. I brushed it aside, told myself it was just talk. Family doesn't scheme like that, right? Then came the little things. Rhonda brought a real estate friend to look at the shop one day, claiming it was just for advice on renovations. I found her taking photos of the back room where we store rare books. When I asked, she shrugged, said she was documenting memories. David started mentioning investors, people who'd pay big for a place like ours. Jude and Maple seemed oblivious, but Maple once asked Aunt Kara, "Are you selling the bookstore?" Her voice was small, worried. I told her no, of course not, this was our family's legacy, but her question stuck with me. I started watching Rhonda closer. Her compliments about the shop felt rehearsed, her hugs too tight. She'd linger by the cash register asking about daily sales or suggest modernizing the place, turning it into some trendy cafe bookstore hybrid. I'd smile, change the subject, but my gut was screaming. I've always been good with numbers, they don't lie. People do. And Rhonda's numbers weren't adding up. Why the sudden interest? Why now? One night after they left, I sat in the shop alone, flipping through Mom's old ledger. She'd written notes in the margins, little reminders about restocking or fixing a shelf. It hit me how much this place meant to her, to me. Rhonda didn't see that she saw dollar signs. I remembered a fight we had as teens when she accused me of being stuck here while she wanted to make it big. Back then, I thought it was just sibling rivalry. Now I wasn't so sure. Last week before her birthday, Rhonda called, her voice all honey. "Kara, let's talk about the shop's future," she said. "We could do so much together." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe family meant more than money. But deep down, I knew better. Something was coming and I wasn't ready for it. Rhonda's visits had me on edge, her questions about the bookstore's finances lingering like a bad debt. 2 weeks before her birthday, she called me late, her voice sharp and urgent. "Kara, we need to meet," she said. "It's about the shop." I agreed, figuring it was another one of her big ideas. The next day, she and David showed up at the bookstore right after I closed, their kids waiting in the car. Rhonda didn't waste time. She sat at the counter, her purse clutched tight, and got straight to the point. "We've been thinking about Mom's inheritance," she said, her eyes locked on mine. "To check the shop. It's a lot for you to handle alone." I frowned, leaning against a bookshelf. "I've been managing fine," I said. "Numbers are my world, taxes, payroll bills. The bookstore wasn't just surviving, it was mine to protect." But Rhonda shook her head, her smile too smooth. "You're burning out, Kara. Running this place, your accounting gigs, it's too much. Let us help." David nodded, his usual quiet self, but his fingers tapped the counter, restless. "We could take over the financial side," he said. "Streamline things, make it easier for you." I didn't like where this was going. "What are you suggesting?" I asked, crossing my arms. Rhonda leaned forward, her voice soft but calculated. "Sign over the inheritance check to me. Let me and David manage the shop's funds. You'd still work here, of course, just without the stress." My stomach twisted. The check was Mom's legacy, meant to keep the store alive, split between us. I'd been using my share to cover repairs, restock books, even pay off old debts. Rhonda. She'd spent hers years ago, never looking back. Why now, I asked, my voice steady but sharp. Rhonda didn't flinch. "Because we're family," she said, like it was obvious. "We want what's best for you, for the shop. Managing it together makes sense, doesn't it?" David chimed in, his tone too rehearsed. "Property taxes are climbing, Kara. You don't want to lose this place to bad decisions." I stared at him, then at Rhonda. They were good, too good. Their words sounded caring, but their eyes betrayed them, darting to the shelves, the register, like they were already counting profits. I thought about Mom, how she'd sit in this shop late at night, balancing books by hand, her laughter filling the air when a customer found the perfect novel. This place was her heart and mine. Letting Rhonda control it felt wrong, but they kept pushing. "You're young," David said. "You shouldn't be tied down to this old shop. We can handle the heavy lifting." Rhonda reached for my hand, her grip cold. trust us, Kara. We'll keep it in the family." I pulled my hand back, my mind racing. I wanted to say no, to tell them to leave, but Rhonda's words about family hit hard. We'd never been close, but she was my sister. Maybe she meant it. Maybe I was overthinking. "I'll consider it," I said finally, my voice tight. "But if I agree, I want guarantees. Legal ones." Rhonda's smile faltered just for a second, but she recovered fast. "Of course," she said. "Whatever makes you comfortable." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing Mom's ledger, her notes in the margins, her dream in every page. The next day, I called Edward Grant, my friend, and a fellow accountant who'd known Mom. They're after the shop, I told him over coffee at a cafe near the bookstore. Edward raised an eyebrow, his face skeptical. "Rhonda, the one who never cared about books," he said. "Be careful, Kara. People don't change overnight." I nodded, but part of me still hoped he was wrong. Over the next week, Rhonda kept calling, her tone sweeter each time. "We're just trying to help," she'd say, or think about Mom's legacy. David sent emails listing benefits of signing over the check tax savings, less stress, a secure future. It sounded logical, but my gut screamed otherwise. Still, I couldn't shake the idea of family. I'd lost Mom. I didn't want to lose Rhonda too. Finally, I agreed to meet with a lawyer. David recommended one, but I insisted on mine, Sarah Mitchell, who'd handled Mom's estate. We met in her office, a small space cluttered with legal books. I laid out my terms. I'd sign over the check, but I'd keep equal control of the shop. No changes without my approval. Sarah drafted the agreement, her pen moving fast. "You sure about this?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. "You're giving up a lot." I nodded, though my chest felt tight. "It's for the family," I said, but the words tasted bitter. Rhonda and David came to the signing, all smiles. Jude and Maple stayed home, probably glued to their phones. The agreement was clear. The check went to Rhonda, but the bookstore stayed under joint control. I'd still run the shop, approve any decisions. Rhonda signed without hesitation, her pen gliding across the page. David clapped me on the shoulder, his grin too wide. "This is the right move, Kara," he said. I forced a smile, ignoring the knot in my stomach. As we left the lawyer's office, Rhonda hugged me, her perfume sharp. "We're in this together," she said. I wanted to believe her, but her words felt like a sales pitch. That night I sat in the bookstore, staring at the empty counter. The agreement was signed, the check handed over. I'd done it for Mom, for family, but deep down I knew something was off. Rhonda's smile, David's quick agreement, it didn't add up. I'd given them the keys to our legacy. Now, I just hoped I hadn't made the biggest mistake of my life. The ink on the agreement was barely dry when everything unraveled. It was a week after I'd signed over the inheritance check to Rhonda, trusting we'd run the bookstore together. I was restocking shelves on a quiet Tuesday, the familiar smell of old paper grounding me when I heard the bell above the door jingle. I looked up expecting a customer, but it was Rhonda and David, their faces all business. Behind them was a woman I didn't know, clutching a tablet, her eyes darting around the shop like she was pricing every shelf. "Kara," Rhonda said, her smile tight. "This is Emily Carter, a designer. She's here to assess the space." I froze, my hand still on a stack of novels. "Assess for what?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Rhonda didn't flinch, just gestured toward Emily, who was already snapping photos of the rare books section. "We're exploring options," Rhonda said, her tone too casual. "This place could be more than just a dusty bookstore, a cafe maybe, or a retail space, something profitable." David nodded, his arms crossed, avoiding my gaze. My heart sank. The agreement we'd signed, joint control, no changes without my approval, felt like a lie already. "What are you talking about?" I said, stepping toward them. "We agreed no changes without my say-so." Rhonda raised an eyebrow, her lips curling slightly. "Kara, be realistic. This shop is bleeding money. We need to modernize, attract investors. She waved a hand dismissing the shelves my mother had built. You can't keep living in the past. I stared at her, my sister, the one person who should have understood what this place meant. Instead, she was tearing it apart. Emily, the designer, chimed in, oblivious to the tension. This space has potential, she said, tapping her tablet. Knock out that wall, add some modern fixtures, it could be a gold mine. I turned to her, my voice cold. No one's knocking out anything. This is my mother's bookstore, and I'm not selling it. Emily looked startled, glancing at Rhonda, who sighed like I was a stubborn child. Kara, Rhonda said, stepping closer. You signed the check over. Legally, it's my call now. My breath caught. Your call. I repeated, my hands clenching. The agreement says we run this together. I have veto power. David finally spoke, his voice low but firm. Technically, the check gives us control of the funds. We're just moving forward. Moving forward. They were planning to gut the shop, erase everything it stood for, and they'd hidden it until the papers were signed. I felt like I'd been punched. You planned this? I said, my eyes locked on Rhonda. You never wanted to run it together. Rhonda's smile vanished, replaced by something harder. Kara, you're too sentimental, she snapped. This place is a relic. We're selling it, or at least part of it, to a developer. You'll get a cut, obviously. A cut. Like I was some hired help, not the sister who'd poured her life into this shop. I glanced at David, hoping for some hint of remorse, but he just stared at the floor. The truth hit me. They'd played me from the start, using family as a bait to get the check. The bell jingled again. Jude and Maple walked in back from the arcade across the street. Maple's eyes widened as she sensed the tension. Aunt Kara, what's wrong? She asked, clutching a stuffed animal. I forced a smile, not wanting to scare her. Nothing, sweetheart, I said, but my voice shook. Jude, glued to his phone, didn't look up. I turned back to Rhonda. You're selling Mom's legacy, I said, my voice low, trembling with anger. You lied to me. Rhonda rolled her eyes, her patience gone. Grow up, Kara. This isn't about Mom, it's about money. We need it and you're in the way. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a sneer. Thanks for the gift now. Get out of my life. The words cut deeper than I'd ever imagined, each syllable a betrayal of everything we'd been through. David shifted uncomfortably, but he didn't contradict her. Emily, clearly uneasy, mumbled something about coming back later and slipped out the door. I stood there surrounded by the books I'd grown up with, the shelves I'd dusted as a kid, the counter where Mom had taught me to count change. This was my home, my heart, and Rhonda was ripping it away. You think you've won? I said, my voice steady now, though my chest burned. You think you can just erase me? Rhonda crossed her arms, unfazed. It's done, Kara. The shop's ours. You can stay on as an employee if you want, but we're moving forward. Employee. The word was a slap. I looked at Maple, her eyes wide with confusion, and Jude, who finally glanced up, sensing the fight. You're wrong, I said to Rhonda, my voice cold. This isn't over. I grabbed my jacket from behind the counter, my hands shaking with rage. I'm not signing off on this. You broke the agreement. Rhonda laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Sue us then, she said. You think you can fight me? I own the check. I walked toward the door, pausing to look back at her. You own the check, I said, but you don't own me. Maple reached for my hand, but Rhonda pulled her back. Go, Kara, Rhonda said, her voice final. We don't need you here. I stepped outside, the cold Portsmouth air hitting my face, but I didn't feel it. My mind was racing, piecing together their plan. They'd waited until I signed, then sprung this sell, the shop cut me out. But I wasn't done. Not yet. I called Edward Grant from my car, my hands still trembling. They're selling the bookstore, I told him, my voice breaking. Edward, always calm, didn't sugarcoat it. "I warned you, Kara," he said. "Rhonda's always been about the bottom line. You need to protect yourself now." I nodded, though he couldn't see me. Protect myself. That's exactly what I'd do, not with tears or pleas, but with something sharper. Rhonda thought she'd outsmarted me, but she didn't know who she was dealing with. I'd spent years balancing books, finding loopholes, making numbers work. If she wanted a fight, she'd get one. Walking out of the bookstore felt like leaving a piece of my soul behind. Rhonda's words, "Thanks for the gift now. Get out of my life," echoed in my head, each syllable a fresh wound. I drove straight to the Seaside Inn, a small hotel in Portsmouth, and checked into a room overlooking the harbor. The clerk handed me the key, her smile polite, oblivious to the storm inside me. I sat on the bed staring at my phone, the weight of Rhonda's betrayal pressing down. She thought she'd won, thought I'd just vanish. But I wasn't the type to roll over. I'd spent years making numbers bend to my will. Rhonda was about to learn what I could do with people. I called Edward Grant from the hotel room, my voice steady despite the anger boiling inside. "They're selling the bookstore," I told him, gripping the phone. Edward sighed, his tone grim, but not surprised. "I told you, Kara. Your sister's always been about profit. What's your move now?" My move. I hadn't figured it out completely, but I knew one thing: Rhonda wasn't getting away with this. She'd broken our agreement, lied about keeping the shop in the family. If she wanted to play dirty, I'd play smarter. First, I needed to regroup. I spent the next morning packing up my office above the bookstore. Every ledger, every file I'd kept for the shop, I boxed up and moved to the hotel. The shelves, the counter, the faint creak of the floorboards. They were all pieces of my mother, pieces Rhonda was ready to sell off. As I carried the last box to my car, Maple appeared at the door, her eyes wide. "Aunt Kara, are you leaving?" she asked, her voice small. I knelt down, forcing a smile. "Just for a bit, sweetheart," I said, hating the lie, but not wanting to drag her into this mess. She hugged me, her arms tight, and I felt a pang of guilt. Jude stood behind her, his phone forgotten for once, watching me with a frown. I nodded at him, then left before I could break. Back at the hotel, I opened my laptop and pulled up my contact list. Years of freelancing as an accountant had given me connections, small business owners, tax consultants, even a few real estate agents in Portsmouth. Rhonda's real estate business thrived on referrals, on her reputation as a trustworthy broker. I'd helped her build that network, introducing her to clients, vouching for her when she started out. Now I'd use those same connections to unravel her. I started with a call to Linda Hayes, a local business owner who'd worked with Rhonda on a commercial property deal. "Linda," I said, keeping my tone neutral, "I've heard some things about my sister's recent projects. You might want to double-check her numbers before signing anything." Linda paused, her voice cautious. "What do you mean, Kara?" I didn't need to say much, just enough to plant doubt. "Let's just say her priorities have shifted. I'd hate for you to get caught in a bad deal." Linda thanked me, her tone uneasy. I knew she'd spread the word. Doubt travels fast in a small town. Next, I emailed a few accountants in my network, all people Rhonda relied on for her clients' financials. I didn't lie, didn't accuse her outright. Instead, I hinted at concerns about her recent business practices, suggesting they verify her contracts carefully. "As her sister," I wrote, "I feel obligated to give you a heads up." It was subtle, professional, but devastating. Rhonda's deals depended on trust, and I was chipping away at it, one carefully worded message at a time. By noon, I'd reached out to 5 key contacts, people who could sway opinions in Portsmouth's tight-knit business community. I didn't feel joy in it, just a cold necessity. Rhonda had betrayed me, turned our mother's legacy into a paycheck. She'd pay a price not in tears or apologies, but in the currency she valued most, her reputation. I met Edward for lunch at a cafe near the hotel. He listened as I laid out what I'd done, his coffee untouched. "You're playing with fire, Kara," he said, but there was a glint of approval in his eyes. "She deserves it," I replied, stirring my tea. "She broke the agreement, lied to my face. This isn't revenge, it's justice." Edward leaned back thoughtful. "Just be careful. Rhonda's not the type to take this lying down." I nodded, but I wasn't worried. I'd spent years being the quiet one, the reliable one. Now I was done playing nice. That afternoon, I got a text from Maple. "Aunt Kara, Mom's mad," it read. "She says you're causing trouble." I stared at the message, my heart twisting. Maple didn't deserve to be caught in the middle, but Rhonda had made her choice. I replied, "Don't worry, sweetheart. I'm just sorting things out. Love you." I hit send, then turned off my phone. I couldn't let guilt stop me, not now. By the end of the week, I'd moved into a small apartment downtown, a temporary place until I figured out my next step. It wasn't home, not like the bookstore, but it was mine. I set up my laptop, started reaching out to new clients for my accounting business. The bookstore was gone, but I wasn't. I'd built a life once. I could do it again. Rhonda thought she'd broken me, thought I'd fade away. But every call I made, every email I sent was proof she was wrong. I called Sarah Mitchell, my lawyer, to review the agreement. "Can I fight this?" I asked, my voice calm but firm. Sarah sighed. "It's tricky, Kara. The check's in Rhonda's name now, but the agreement gives you veto power over the shop's use. If they're selling without your approval, you've got grounds to sue. Sue my sister." The thought left a bitter taste, but I wasn't ruling it out. For now, I'd hit Rhonda where it hurt her business, her pride. I wasn't cruel about it. I didn't spread lies or start rumors. I just let the truth do the work, Rhonda's greed, her betrayal, her willingness to sell our mother's dream. By the time I was done, her clients would think twice, her deals would stall, and her perfect reputation would crack. She'd learn what it felt like to lose something she cared about. And me, I was already planning my next chapter 1, where Rhonda had no place. 6 months after walking away from the bookstore, I found myself in Concord, New Hampshire, a quiet town with cobblestone streets and a slower pace. I'd leased a small office space downtown, a corner spot with just enough room for my desk, and a few shelves of my own books, ones I'd salvaged from Mom's collection. I was building my accounting business from scratch, taking on clients, balancing ledgers, carving out a life that was mine alone. The pain of Rhonda's betrayal still lingered, but it didn't define me anymore. I was moving forward, and it felt good. The move wasn't easy. Leaving Portsmouth meant leaving the bookstore behind, the place where I'd grown up, where Mom's laughter still echoed in my memory. But staying wasn't an option, not after Rhonda had made it clear she'd sell our mother's legacy without a second thought. I'd heard through Edward that the bookstore was on the market, its shelves stripped, its charm, gutted for a modern retail space. Rhonda's real estate business was struggling, my calls and emails to her clients had done their job. Deals were falling through, referrals drying up. I didn't feel triumph, just a quiet sense of justice. She'd chosen money over family, and now she was paying the price. One evening, as I was closing my office, my phone buzzed. It was Rhonda, her name flashing on the screen like a warning. I hesitated, then answered, my voice cold. "What do you want?" Her tone was softer than I expected, almost pleading. "Kara, can we talk? I'm sorry about everything." I leaned against my desk, the weight of her words hitting me. "Sorry. After lying, after stealing Mom's dream, after telling me to get out of her life, she was sorry. Why now?" I asked, my grip tightening on the phone. "Because your business is tanking," she sighed, and I could hear the strain in her voice. "Things are tough, Kara. The bookstore sale isn't going through. Clients are backing out. I didn't mean for it to end like this." I closed my eyes, picturing her standing in her fancy office, surrounded by the deals she thought would make her rich. "You meant every word you said, Rhonda," I replied. "You wanted me gone and you got it. But you don't get to walk back in now." There was a long pause, then she whispered, "I'm your sister, Kara. Doesn't that mean anything?" "It did once, but not anymore. You made your choice," I said, my voice steady. "You sold." Mom's legacy lied to my face and thought I'd just take it. Family doesn't do that. I hung up before she could respond, my heart racing but resolute. There was no going back. Rhonda wasn't my sister anymore. She was a stranger who'd traded our past for a paycheck. I kept in touch with Maple, though. She'd started emailing me short messages about school books she was reading, even the fights between Rhonda and David. Mom stressed all the time, she wrote once. "I miss the bookstore." I replied with stories about Concord, about the new clients I was working with, about the little book club I'd joined at a local cafe. "You can visit any time, sweetheart," I wrote. "This place has great stories, too." Maple was my link to the family I'd lost, a reminder that not everything was broken. Jude was quieter, but he'd sent a text once asking if I was okay. I told him I was, and I meant it. My new life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I'd started teaching a part-time accounting course at a community college, sharing tricks I'd learned over the years. My students were eager, some even asking about the bookstore when I mentioned it in passing. I didn't dwell on the loss, just used it to explain the importance of trust in business. Every ledger I balanced, every client I helped, felt like a step toward rebuilding what Rhonda had tried to take away. One morning, Edward called from Portsmouth. "Your sister's business is barely hanging on," he said, his voice matter of fact. "She's selling her office to cover debts." I nodded, staring out my window at the Concord skyline. "She made her bed," I said. "Let her lie in it." Edward chuckled, but there was no joy in it. "You're tougher than I thought, Kara." Maybe I was. Or maybe I'd just learned that trust once broken can't be patched up with apologies. Looking back, I see the lesson clearly. Rhonda thought she could take everything, Mom's bookstore, our family's heart, and leave me with nothing. But she underestimated me. I didn't need her approval or her money to start over. I built a new life, one ledger at a time, proving that betrayal doesn't get the last word. Trust is fragile, and once it's gone, no amount of sorry can bring it back. To anyone watching, let this be a warning. Choose who you trust carefully, because some people will sell your heart for a profit. And when they do, don't let them define you. Stand up, walk away, and build something better. Thank you for listening to my story. If it hit you hard, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and leave a comment. Tell me, have you ever faced a betrayal like this? I'd love to hear your thoughts.